Life is like bearing a heavy burden while traveling a long road. Patience is the source of eternal peace. Treat anger as an enemy. These are the words of Tokugawa Ieyasu, a samurai who rose from hostage to shogun. Konnichiwa. Welcome to the story of the last of the three unifiers of Sengoku, Japan. Today, we look at the life of Tokugawa Ieyasu. Ieyasu was born in 1542 into a family of a minor daimyo in Mikawa province, or modern-day Eastern Aichi Prefecture, as the son of Matsudaira Hirotada, lord of the Okazaki Castle. His childhood name was Matsudaira Takechiyo, but changed his name several times. First to Matsudaira Motonobu, then to Matsudaira Motoyasu and Matsudaira Ieyasu, before finally settling on Tokugawa Ieyasu. Throughout this video, we use the name Tokugawa Ieyasu, which is the one best remembered in history. When Ieyasu was born, the Matsudaira was a weak daimyo sandwiched between powerful and predatory neighbors, the Oda to the west and the Imagawa to the east. Hirotada, Ieyasu's father, chose to forge alliance with the Imagawa, but Yoshimoto, the head of the Imagawa clan, demanded young Ieyasu as hostage to secure the alliance. As I said, hostage, you may have thought of a prisoner-like life, but it was not necessarily cruel. In Sengoku-era diplomacy, it was common practice to entrust one's children or siblings to other daimyo in order to secure the alliance. As long as the alliance was maintained, they were okay. But once the alliance was broken, they would be killed. Thus, Ieyasu, at the age of 6, was separated from his family in Okazaki Castle and departed for Sunpu Castle, Imagawa's stronghold. However, something unexpected occurred before he reached the Imagawa territory. Oda Nobuhide interrupted the entourage and abducted Ieyasu. He tried to use Ieyasu as leverage, demanding Hirotada to break ties with the Imagawa. But Hirotada refused, saying that sacrificing his son would prove his loyalty to the Imagawa. Eventually, Ieyasu was kept alive as a bargaining chip for ensuing negotiations, and 2 years later, he was handed over to the Imagawa clan. His youth was shaped by fear, but fear forged foresight. He led a hostage life in Suruga with the Imagawa until he turned 18. His formative years under the Imagawa weren't just about survival. Imagawa Yoshimoto took good care of Ieyasu, provided him with lessons in military tactics and governance. And what's more, had his niece, Lady Tsukiyama, married to Ieyasu when he was 17. 2 years later, she bore Nobuyasu, their first son. Under Yoshimoto, Ieyasu grew to become a fully fledged samurai. Turning point in Ieyasu's life came at the age of 18. The Battle of Okehazama. Oda Nobunaga ambushed and killed Imagawa Yoshimoto. Imagawa's defeat allowed Ieyasu to escape the hostage life. He returned to Okazaki Castle to head the Matsudaira clan as an independent daimyo. Notwithstanding the past enmity with the Oda clan, Ieyasu allied with Oda Nobunaga. Ieyasu had developed a pragmatic approach that wasn't constrained by the past. As a token of their alliance, Ieyasu had his eldest son, Nobuyasu, married to Nobunaga's daughter, Tokuhime. The alliance allowed Ieyasu to advance eastwards without fear of attack from behind, while Nobunaga advanced to the west. Ieyasu demonstrated his talent as an outstanding military commander. He unified Mikawa province in 1566 and further captured neighboring Toyotomi province, and moved his residence to Hamamatsu Castle in Toyotomi. The alliance with Nobunaga was paying off. However, the alliance with Nobunaga brought about an unexpected crisis: conflict with Takeda Shingen. Takeda Shingen, nicknamed the Tiger of Kai, was a daimyo whom even Nobunaga feared. Ashikaga Yoshiaki, the 15th shogun of the Ashikaga shogunate, was calling upon the powerful warlords across the country to form an encirclement strategy against Nobunaga. Shingen accepted Yoshiaki's call, setting off on a march to defeat Nobunaga in Kyoto. Nobunaga became Shingen's enemy. It meant Ieyasu, Nobunaga's ally, also became Shingen's enemy. And Hamamatsu Castle, the residence of Ieyasu, was located on Shingen's route to Kyoto. Ieyasu's confrontation with Shingen became unavoidable. Shingen's army departed their base in Kai province in October 1572 and in December approached Hamamatsu Castle, Ieyasu's stronghold. Ieyasu was holed up in Hamamatsu Castle to avoid head-to-head clash with Shingen and prepared for Shingen's attack. However, events took an unexpected turn. Shingen didn't attack Hamamatsu Castle, but instead continued the march directly to the west. Ieyasu was taken aback. Why didn't Shingen attack? Why does he just walk through? Ieyasu, however, saw this as a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. If he chased Shingen and struck from behind, he could throw Shingen's army into confusion and secure a victory. Ieyasu ran out of the castle and pursued Shingen's army. But it was Shingen's deadly trap. When Ieyasu arrived at the Mikatagahara field, Shingen had laid out a perfect formation and was waiting for Ieyasu. No sooner had Ieyasu arrived than they launched an onslaught with 3 times as many troops. Ieyasu barely escaped with his life, returning to Hamamatsu Castle with only a handful of retainers. The Battle of Mikatagahara was Ieyasu's greatest and most humiliating defeat in his life. Now that Shingen defeated Ieyasu, the direct clash with Nobunaga seemed unavoidable. However, the conflict with Shingen came to an abrupt end. Not long after the Battle of Mikatagahara, Shingen died. Nobunaga and Ieyasu sighed with relief. And Ieyasu continued to fight with Nobunaga to support his national unification efforts as his ally. But in 1579, the most tragic and politically charged incident in Ieyasu's rise to power occurred. It all started with the conflict between Lady Tsukiyama, Ieyasu's wife, and Tokuhime, their daughter-in-law, and the biological daughter of Nobunaga. Because Tokuhime bore no sons, Lady Tsukiyama decided to procure a concubine for Nobuyasu. This enraged Tokuhime, who sent a letter to Nobunaga, her father, denouncing Lady Tsukiyama and Nobuyasu. She even went so far as to accuse Lady Tsukiyama of conspiring with Nobunaga's archenemy, the Takeda clan. Did Lady Tsukiyama really conspire with the Takeda? We really don't know. But Nobunaga got furious. He demanded that Ieyasu kill Lady Tsukiyama and Nobuyasu as a show of good faith and loyalty to maintain Oda-Tokugawa alliance. And Ieyasu obeyed. He put the alliance with Nobunaga before the lives of his wife and son. Ieyasu had his retainer behead Lady Tsukiyama and forced Nobuyasu to commit seppuku, or ritual suicide. But 3 years after the death of his wife and son, Ieyasu received a startling news. Honnoji incident. Nobunaga was assassinated by his senior vassal Akechi Mitsuhide while staying at the Honnoji Temple in Kyoto. But Mitsuhide wouldn't survive long. He was killed by Toyotomi Hideyoshi, also a Nobunaga's senior vassal, 11 days after the Honnoji incident. Nobunaga's death threw Oda clan into chaos, and the leadership struggle erupted over who would succeed Nobunaga. Initially, two of Nobunaga's senior vassals, Toyotomi Hideyoshi and Shibata Katsuie, both claimed to be his successor. Ultimately, it was Hideyoshi who emerged victorious after defeating Katsuie in the Battle of Shizugatake the following year. At first, Ieyasu remained neutral, but he became increasingly alarmed by Hideyoshi's rapid rise to power. Hideyoshi killed Mitsuhide and Katsuie. The next target may be Ieyasu. He found a new ally in Oda Nobukatsu, the eldest surviving son of Nobunaga, who was also disgruntled by the rise of Hideyoshi. The allied forces of Ieyasu and Nobukatsu challenged Hideyoshi in the Battle of Komaki and Nagakute. Following initial standoff, Hideyoshi attempted a surprise march toward Okazaki Castle, Ieyasu's stronghold. But Tokugawa forces intercepted and defeated Hideyoshi's vanguards, killing famed commanders Ikeda Tsuneoki and Mori Nagayoshi. Despite Hideyoshi's numerical advantage, Ieyasu's military brilliance led to a tactical victory. However, neither side could secure a decisive strategic win. Eventually, peace was brokered through hostage exchange. Ieyasu sent his second son Hideyasu to Hideyoshi, who reciprocated with his mother Oman Dokoro and sister Asahi Hime. And Ieyasu abandoned his plan to overthrow Hideyoshi and instead chose to become his vassal. He chose to wait. He will wait until the right time comes. From that point onwards, Ieyasu remained a loyal vassal of Hideyoshi, supporting him with his national unification efforts. 6 years after the Battle of Komaki and Nagakute, Hideyoshi had achieved the national unification. Hideyoshi rewarded Ieyasu by granting him control of the entire Kanto region. At first glance, this didn't seem like a bad deal, because it would give him much higher rice yields than his existing territories. In feudal Japan, the power of a daimyo was measured by the amount of rice harvested in his territories. In reality, however, Hideyoshi saw Ieyasu as a threat and wanted to relocate him far from his own bases in Kyoto and Osaka to prevent a rebellion. Ieyasu obediently moved to Edo in southern Kanto. At the time, Edo was little more than a small fishing village. Who could have imagined that the sleepy backwater would grow to become the world's largest megalopolis, today known as Tokyo? In 1598, Hideyoshi died at the age of 62, worrying about the future of his extremely young son Hideyori, whom he bore at the age of 57. On his deathbed, Hideyoshi had the Council of 5 Elders, headed by Ieyasu, pledged to provide guardianship for Hideyori. Now, Hideyoshi is dead. Ieyasu turned 57. He waited enough, and the right time has come. Before his death, Hideyoshi had instructed the Council of 5 Elders to adopt a collective leadership system. However, Ieyasu disregarded this and began to dominate the political arena. This led to confrontation with Ishida Mitsunari, a leading warlord loyal to the Toyotomi. Mitsunari feared Ieyasu's ambitions and defiance of Hideyoshi's legacy. Their rivalry culminated in the decisive Battle of Sekigahara in 1600. The country's daimyo split into two, the Eastern Army headed by Ieyasu and the Western Army led by Mitsunari. In the early stages of the battle, the Western Army had the upper hand. But the betrayal of Kobayakawa Hideaki in Western camp changed the course of the battle. His troops began firing on Western troops. This threw Western Army into confusion, and the Eastern Army gained the edge. The battle lasted only 6 hours and was won by the Eastern Army. Mitsunari was captured and executed. The victory confirmed Ieyasu's hegemony over Japan. He founded a new shogunate in Edo and became the shogun of Japan. But there was a daimyo who stood in Ieyasu's way, Toyotomi Hideyoshi, Hideyoshi's son. To the Toyotomi clan, Ieyasu was merely their vassal. And now that Hideyoshi had come of age, power had to be returned to the Toyotomi family. Ieyasu sought an excuse to attack. He accused the Toyotomi of inscribing words cursing Ieyasu on the temple bill Hideyoshi had built, which was in fact a false accusation. Ieyasu demanded that Hideyoshi either abandon Osaka castle or that Hideyoshi or his mother come to Edo as a hostage. Neither option was acceptable to Hideyoshi. The rivalry culminated in the siege of Osaka, which began in 1614 and was divided into two phases, the winter campaign and the summer campaign. Ieyasu laid a massive siege to the Osaka castle with 200,000 men. Hideyoshi was held up in the supposedly impregnable Osaka castle. He had an army of 100,000 loyal to the Toyotomi. Despite the numerical inferiority, the Toyotomi's army put up a good fight. Especially noteworthy was Sanada Yukimura, who led a daring assault directly toward Tokugawa Ieyasu's headquarters, aiming to strike a decisive blow. Although his forces were exhausted and outnumbered, they came dangerously close to breaching Ieyasu's position. But the Toyotomi couldn't withstand Ieyasu's massive attack. The castle finally fell in the summer campaign of 1615. Hideyoshi and his mother killed themselves in the burning Osaka castle, marking the end of the Toyotomi clan. The Tokugawa family no longer had any enemies in their way. The following year, Ieyasu died in Sunpu Castle, where he had spent his youth as a hostage with the Imagawa. He was 75. For over 250 years, the Tokugawa shogunate would shape Japan's destiny. A legacy born not of ambition alone, but of restraint, resilience, and the quiet power of waiting for the right moment. His journey reminds us, true strength lies not in rushing ahead, but in enduring with patience, perseverance, and purpose. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the life of Tokugawa Ieyasu. If you found his story fascinating, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with fellow history lovers. ありがとうございました。さよなら。